verified quorum by the Secretariat, and I hereby declare open this special session of the Permanent Council, which has been convened pursuant to Article 37 of the Rules of Procedure. This is the traditional request made by the Permanent Observer Mission of Spain under the title, The Encounter Between Two Worlds, pursuant to the provisions of Article 43 of the Rules of Procedure. I submit for consideration by the Permanent Council the draft order of business as contained in document CP/OD-2564/25. If there are no requests for the floor, we will adopt it. Dear colleagues, Mr. Secretary General, Ambassador Monton, the topic that brings us together today, the encounter between two worlds, is taking place in a decisive moment of history for mankind. The contact between the people of Europe and those who are native to this hemisphere. This was a complex encounter, profoundly painful in many senses, and particularly for the indigenous communities of the Americas who faced challenges, transformations, and irreparable loss. But it was also an encounter which, in time and with the pain of that very existence, led to a new reality known as the Americas, with a unique cultural mix and diversity throughout centuries, which has molded the identity, dynamism, and diversity of our hemisphere. We are the result of this historic process of both pain and hope, fracture and lessons, conflict, and also possibilities for understanding. And today, over 500 years later, that shared legacy calls on us to recognize the fact that the destiny of both sides of the Atlantic are irrefutably linked. America wouldn't be the same without Europe, and Europe wouldn't be the same or complete without the Americas. This session is an opportunity for us to honestly and frankly reflect on that shared past and learn from it under the premise of mutual respect, historic memory, and international cooperation, looking toward a future of justice, inclusion, and prosperity for all people.
En este orden de ideas, continuando con nuestro...
Continuing with our order of business, I am pleased to give the floor to the distinguished Ambassador of Spain, Carmen Monton. Ambassador, welcome, and I give you the floor.
Buenos días.
Good morning. Convening this special session of the Permanent Council is a reciprocal gesture of friendship and affection. And Chair of the Permanent Council, dear Ambassador Tomás Pascual, Secretary General Albert Ramdin, during this first session of the Permanent Council, I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate my country's renewed commitment to strengthening this beloved OAS. Assistant Secretary General Laura Gil, it's a delight to greet you as the first woman in your position. Greetings to the beloved ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, who make us feel part of this family. And I would also like to express our affection for the Department of Foreign Relations and Institutional Relations from the Department of Protocol, without forgetting the Museum of Art of the Americas and the Cologne Library, where we have been working under the leadership of the Cultural Diplomacy Circle of the OAS. And we recognize everyone who works at the OAS and the Inter-American System, the Inter-American Court and Commission,
Americana de la Salud,
as well as PAHO. Finally, I am delighted to invite you to all of our national holiday, to all of the Spaniards who are with us today. Dear colleagues, we are delighted to see that this emblematic date, which has roots in the past, has now taken on new meaning. The speeches of before have now faded, and they're part of the Cologne Library. Now they have become words that highlight mutual respect, cooperation, diversity, and interculturality. Today is an opportunity for us to recognize the indigenous populations, the Afro-descendant population, and so many diverse cultures and nationalities that make up the reality of the Americas and Spain. Today is also a good opportunity for us to reiterate our shared heritage and strong ties representing the Spanish language. Its strength is here in America. And I recognize the Enye Friendship Circle for the Spanish language and thank them for their work in promoting multilingualism and the Spanish language and the very successful classes that we provide, which will certainly restart in 2026, as well as the resolution commemorating the Spanish language. Today, above all, it's a great time for us to focus on the strength of our partnership and the will to build a community. And also, along the lessons of Leila Valladares, who brought together so many ancestral songs when she stated that when we sing together, no one is out of tune. This is a great time for us to take advantage of our opportunities stemming from that unity. As one of the very first observer states since 1972, we are a trustworthy partner financially, institutionally, and politically. Spain has many different cooperation mechanisms, and the most important is the Spanish Fund for the OAS from the AECID, which brings together $70 million. And next year, we'll be celebrating 20 years of uninterrupted cooperation with a view toward horizontal cooperation, and this places us as one of the main external donors of the OAS. We are a partner to defending democracy and human rights. Spain is a partner for defending multilateralism, peace, cooperation, sustainable and inclusive development. My country is celebrating 50 years of Spain in democracy. That Spain of the dictatorship was starving for bread and freedom. This was an era which sent so many Republicans in exile, and I am very grateful when I remember that so many of them found their second home in the Americas. Afterward, in 1975, Spain's society decided to choose democracy and freedom to become an advanced country, an economic driver in Europe with influence, which is open, respectful, and has solidarity with others. My dear colleagues, as we look in the rearview mirror, that and no other is Spain's heritage. This is our historic gesture. This is our conquest, democratic Spain. I'd like to share this reflection to reiterate that democracy is something that must be defended, and the multilateral world has an important role here. With all of its flaws, this is the best system for living together. Freedom is a good that we can always lose, particularly in times of crisis and inequality, whenever authoritarianism finds fertile ground for extremism and polarization. Fascism is the great threat to democracy. We thought that this was a thing of the past, and yet it calls on all of us as Democrats. 80 years after the liberation of the Nazi concentration camps, fascism is still represented in parliaments worldwide. Preserving democracy is an ethical, political task which goes far beyond the polls and voting booths. We must rethink our democratic system and how it guarantees citizens' rights in the face of reactionary movements. And the Spanish government, along with the governments of Brazil, Colombia, Chile, and Uruguay, has launched an initiative called Defense of Democracy. At the OAS, we value the work of the voluntary group of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, as well as the leadership of the Secretary General and the OAS with the Roadmap for Stability and Peace in Haiti, which we would like to support. Additionally, our commitment to democratic governability is reflected in the EMOs and projects for the universalization of civil identity in the Americas. We'd like to support Guatemala in the special mission for strengthening democratic institutions. Support for the Inter-American System of Human Rights, that is the court and the ICHR, with our active role to promote regular, orderly, and safe migration with a focus on human rights using the MIRPS support platform. We are committed to fighting trafficking in persons. We support programs for drug control, and we have this year celebrated the 10th anniversary of the cybersecurity boot camp in the city of León. On the other hand, we are firmly committed to cooperating with PAHO as we defend global health and the right to universal health care, and particularly when it comes to mental health. Finally, Spain, from its robust and active feminist foreign policy, recognizes feminism as a democratizing force. Courses for female electoral candidates and the model in American law for parity are some of the tangible results that we have achieved alongside the SEAM. We will always be present as we fight against all forms of discrimination, supporting Inter-American Weeks for Native communities and Afro-descendant communities, or RIAFRO, with our leadership defending the rights of LGBTQ plus persons, particularly during our co-chairmanship alongside Colombia of the Coalition for Equal Rights. Dear colleagues, Spain's response to the threats faced by democracy means placing more trust in multilateralism. We place great importance on the OAS as a space for speaking with other members in this region, and we need more spaces for shared dialogue to improve cooperation and partnerships. Thank you very much to the Secretary General at the Summit of Seville on Financing for Development. Spain was the host country, and we reiterated our role as a guarantor of multilateralism, committing to 0.7% of the GDP for official development aid by 2030. In Seville, the Secretary General held an audience with His Majesty Felipe VI and signed a new contribution with the director of the Agency for Cooperation and Development. We also supported the work of Verdasca on fiscal policies to strengthen the guarantee of rights in line with the Seville agreements. Another multilateral place where we would like to play an important role is the Inter-American Summit in Madrid in 2026, and we are the pro tempore chair. We would like to also bring that closer to other spaces, particularly the OAS and the Caribbean. Our commitment to multilateralism is as strong as our commitment to peace. We have decisively supported MAP Colombia and the adjacency zone mission in Belize and Guatemala. To conclude, as the representative of Spain at this home of the Americas, I have to also mention the genocide in Gaza. We also would like to condemn Russia's aggression against the people of Ukraine. And I will conclude. Under the leadership of Secretary General Ramdeen, we will work together. We can continue to strengthen multilateralism and democratic values. The OAS is a historic organization which today can leave an important legacy promoting freedom and democracy. The time has come for democracy and multilateralism. It is worth moving forward with hope, because as Machado himself said, today is always still here. Thank you very much for your comments.
Muchas gracias, embajadora.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your presentation. And now we will give the floor to the coordinators of the regional groups, as well as other delegations that would like to respond to the topic that brings us together today at this special session.
Colombia.
Colombia is recognized. Thank you very much, Chair. Sincere congratulations to you for taking the helm of the Permanent Council. We reiterate our strong support for your work leading this Permanent Council. We know that with your leadership, you will be able to move forward as we build consensus on very relevant topics, such as the budget of the OAS, the rights of Afro-descendant peoples, and mental health in the region, among others. Similarly, I'd like to take this opportunity to express our thanks to the outgoing chair, and we recognize the ambassador for his commitment, his work, as well as his excellent skill at coordinating our efforts. Thank you to Spain for inviting us to hold this special session. This meeting calls on us to reflect on the encounter between two worlds, which, despite its historic complexity, is something that brings us together as we build solidarity, friendship, mutual respect, and shared goals. These ties reiterate our ability to coordinate as we work together in facing global challenges. And today, more than ever, it's fundamental for us to reiterate this commitment to strengthen mankind and the people of both Europe and the Americas. Today, more than ever, we need to be united as we defend our shared values and for the good of our people and mankind as a whole. Spain and the people of the Americas share a deep conviction, democracy, and multilateralism. These are essential tools for facing the challenges of the 21st century. This is not an abstract ideal. These are concrete instruments for guaranteeing peace, social justice, and sustainable development. As expressed so well by President Petro, if we don't have multilateralism, there is no shared agenda. And without a shared agenda, there is no shared well-being. And as Pedro Sanchez stated as well, democracy is in a battle for its survival. This requires strong institutions with real cooperation and fair international governance that has more solidarity, more inclusivity. Our countries share a language and history as well as the task of our shared future. We must be active stakeholders as we defend the international order that's based on rules, equity, and respect for human rights. We reiterate that democracy is non-negotiable and multilateralism is the most effective path toward defending shared challenges together. We have an active commitment for building a fairer world, and this is reflected in our bilateral cooperation, which is strategic and robust. Thank you very much for your ongoing support from Spain in the peace process in Colombia, particularly through MAP OAS, and working to promote the regions impacted by the conflict. This relationship is characterized by an inclusive approach and a real ability to creating a positive impact in our communities. Our joint efforts must continue in key areas such as climate change, food security, integrating migrants, energy transition, which is fair, as well as recognizing ethnic and cultural diversity. Similarly, we share a strong commitment to gender equality and the empowerment of women, strengthening public policies with a gender-based approach, as well as feminist policies in our various foreign policies. Spain will continue to be one of the main allies that we have, and from Colombia we reiterate our will to deepening that cooperation in all areas, particularly when it comes to the OAS. In a context of growing global challenges, we must consolidate the OAS as a key platform for building consensus, coordinating our efforts and strengthening multilateralism and defending the international order, which is based on rules. This is fundamental for working together to address the challenges faced by our people. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias a la delegación de Colombia.
Thank you very much, Colombia. Panama.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm honored to take the floor this morning on behalf of the delegations of Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and the Dominican Republic. I would like to thank Spain and its distinguished ambassador for this very valuable presentation. And I'd like to express our warmest congratulations to the people and government of the Kingdom of Spain as they commemorate on October 12th their national holiday. Chair. On October 12th, we commemorate a moment for reflection on the encounter between two worlds. This is a complex process which over several centuries has woven close ties between Spain and the nations of Latin America. Today, those ties have been renewed under the aegis of cooperation, mutual respect, and commitment to our shared future. And Spain has been a strategic partner, a source of constant solidarity. And since 2004, when it became an observer state of SICA, Spain has contributed decisively to strengthening our institutions at the regional level, and it has done so by supporting us with technical and financial resources, programs aimed at democratic security, human rights, environmental management, reducing risks, and gender equality. This commitment has been expressed through cooperation at the bilateral and triangular level, promoting the Spanish Agency for International Development Aid with projects that have benefited millions of Central Americans in vital areas such as education, healthcare, rural development, sustainable development, and institutional strengthening. There is no coincidence here that Spain has traditionally been one of the greatest donors in our region, which confirms the depth of its ties and bonds to our entire region. One very relevant example is the Humanitarian Logistical Center for Latin America and the Caribbean, which was established in my country, Panama, thanks to cooperation from Spain. This platform has shown its ability to respond effectively and swiftly to humanitarian emergencies, saving lives and bringing hope to vulnerable communities throughout Central America and the Caribbean. Our multilateral relationship has reached notable maturity, sustained on shared values, defending multilateralism, promoting democracy, sustainable development, and social justice. Spain has been consolidated as a cultural, political, and economic support of the highest level with investments in strategic sectors such as telecoms, insurance, pharmaceuticals, infrastructure, and culture. This contributes to building opportunities and reducing inequalities throughout the region. Chair, dear colleagues, I would like to once again congratulate the people and government of Spain. We'd also like to highlight the valuable work of Ambassador Carmen Monton and her team, who, with dedication and commitment, represent the very active presence of Spain in our region. I'd like to conclude by reiterating that Central America, Panama, the Dominican Republic, and Spain are part of the same historic and human tradition where each thread is a culture, a language, a tradition, and a shared vision of the future. This encounter between two worlds must continue to be an example of respect, solidarity, and joint growth, projecting us toward new ways of cooperating and reaching understanding for the generations to come. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias a la delegación de
Thank you very much, Panama. Costa Rica. Chair of the Permanent Council, Tomás Pascual, Ambassador of Spain to the OAS, Carmen Monton, Mr. Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, dear permanent representatives, observers, delegates, and Spaniards with us today. Chair, we are delighted to speak to you today at this Permanent Council and see you at its helm. Costa Rica will be vice chair during this period, so you can count on all of our effort in supporting you as you bring us and our work to good places. With the arrival of the coordinator of our sub-regional coordinator, Panama, I'd like to make a brief intervention on behalf of Costa Rica. For Costa Rica, it's a great honor to participate in this special session dedicated to the encounter between two worlds. It is convened on a date that invites us to reflect not only on the history that we share with Spain, but also on how that history has been projected toward the future in our hemisphere. It's been over 500 years now since those indigenous cultures in this continent and the European cultures met. This was a complex process with wounds and lessons learned, but at the same time, it led to exchanges that continue to remain alive in our societies. And today, this legacy is reflected in the diversity of our identities, in the strength of our languages, and the wealth of our traditions. That includes our gastronomic traditions. I would also like to highlight the resilience of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Their wisdom continues to guide us during times of great global challenges. They remind us of the importance of living in harmony with nature, caring for our territory, and recognizing the dignity of all persons. At the same time, we value Spain's contribution not only linguistically and culturally, but also as a strategic partner in this organization. Spain has provided us with robust support for the values that bring us together: democracy, human rights, and comprehensive development. This cooperation is the proof that our shared history can also be the story of a shared future. Today, more than ever, we need to build bridges based on respect, solidarity, and inclusion. At the Permanent Council, we have an opportunity to transform the memory of a complex shared past into a present of friendship and a future of justice and peace. At the OAS, Costa Rica and Spain, thanks to the proactive leadership of Ambassador Monton and her entire team, share an agenda of cooperation that includes strengthening democracy, inclusive leadership, the rights of women, and promoting the Spanish language through Eñe Circle. Together, we also work at the United Nations to establish the scientific panel on artificial intelligence and reiterate our commitment to inclusive global governance based on scientific excellence, because technology and science are also made in Spanish. Costa Rica reiterates its commitment to working with each and every one of you, and with Spain in particular, to ensure that this dialogue is not just another commemoration, but also an inspiration to guide new generations. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Costa Rica, and for your well wishes. We'll give the floor now to Paraguay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to congratulate you for your chairship of the Permanent Council, and the representative from Costa Rica for her vice chairship. And you can count on Paraguay for support as you begin the work of the next 3 months. A warm welcome to the General Secretary General, as well as the Assistant Secretary General, who are here with us today, and hugs to our dear colleague, representative from Spain, Carmen Monton. It's a real pleasure to see you here. Paraguay is grateful for the calling of this event, this extraordinary meeting, to look at the historical context that shaped our universal history and marked a turning point in the Americas and for Europe. Today, we commemorate a date that calls us to reflect on our political, social, economic, and cultural processes of great complexity, the meeting between two worlds that created new realities and pushed forward great transformations to create a legacy that we share today. Within that framework, Paraguay would also like to honor those of indigenous populations and communities whose heritage is invaluable, their wisdom and harmonious relationship with the environment have enriched and continue to enrich our country's cultural legacies. Their living presence reminds us that the history of this continent is the fruit of many cultures that continue today. Paraguay also recognizes the contributions from Spain to our societies, its influence in cultural and institutional bodies in the Americas, and the key role that it has played in strengthening the Spanish language as a universal language, a vehicle for dialogue, cooperation, and mutual understanding between our peoples. The language that brings us together is a key tool for multilateralism. Spanish is not just a way of communicating, but a channel for transmitting ideas, visions that are shared and that strengthen our international organizations, such as the Organization of American States. In that context, Paraguay would like to recognize the invaluable support of Spain for cooperation and the projects carried out together with the OAS and Spain to strengthen institutions, work on innovation, and focus on the sustainable development of our countries, all the while strengthening the historical ties that bind us and project us to the future. We'd also like to highlight two recent events that are particularly relevant to the maturity of this historic relationship. First, the Ibero-American Summit in 2026 in Madrid, which will be a new opportunity to renew the commitments of our community together as we face global challenges. And on the other hand, we have the 55th anniversary of Spanish democracy, which is another indication of just how mature our ties are becoming. We see a dialogue here between equals and a commitment to democratic values that are expressed in our shared projects and initiatives together between the OAS and Spain. Paraguay believes that commemorating this date is not just looking at the past, but also looking towards the future, to a relationship that is based on respect, friendship, and cooperation. We remember this tie and we reaffirm our commitment to development and prosperity for all. Many thanks.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Paraguay. Now I will give Peru the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, permanent representatives and observer states, permanent observer of Spain to the OAS, Mr. Secretary General, Madam Assistant Secretary General, dear colleagues. First, I would like to, Mr. Chair, express on behalf of Peru's mission to the OAS our best wishes for success for your management of this body, and we support you fully. At the same time, I'd like to take the opportunity to recognize the management by the representative from Canada. The permanent mission of Peru before the OAS also welcomes this time to reflect and remember, called an encounter between two worlds. This invites us to value our points in common historically between Spain, Europe, and the indigenous peoples of the Americas. This meeting point is not just a date on the calendar. It is a living process. It is in constant evolution, and it is renewed through our language, our traditions, and our shared values. The Spanish legacy and that of indigenous peoples have enriched our continent and has led to an incredibly diverse and dynamic population. We see this in their literature, their creativity, their gastronomy, their music, and their musical expressions, contributing to the universal cultural enrichment. This exchange has also enriched Spain and Europe through the cultural, economic, and human values in the Americas. Mr. Chair, Spanish-speaking countries share something that crosses borders and strengthens our ties. As Gasset once said, language is not just an instrument for communication, but rather a way of interpreting the world and shaping the way we think and sharing a vision of reality. More than 500 million people on this planet speak Spanish as a native language, and that means that we are the second largest language group in the world. And in that context, I'm happy to announce that as of from 14th to 17th of October, in Arequipa, we will celebrate an international conference to celebrate the Spanish language, where we will discuss challenges to Spanish, intercultural issues, access to language, and artificial intelligence, among other issues. That space will bring together experts, academics, writers to talk about challenges that our language faces in the 21st century, particularly when it comes to the digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and communications. I hope to also take this opportunity to commemorate the life and work of the Peruvian writer and Spanish writer, Mario Vargas Llosa, who won the Nobel Prize in Literature. And his legacy is a universal bridge that ties together our problems, our history, our cultures, our hopes for all of humanity. His voice, together with that of many Hispanic American writers, is part of our shared legacy. Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, the encounter between two worlds should not just be an episode that commemorates the past, but rather one that celebrates our living relationship of cooperation and recognition of our multiple roots and histories. From Peru, we reaffirm our support for that living culture, and we are committed to moving forward to preserve our cultural diversity and linguistic diversity, and to build a future that is prosperous and inclusive for all people in the Americas. We are united in the goals of this organization. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Gracias a la delegación de Perú. A continuación,
Thank you, Peru. Bolivia, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Allow me first to greet you, the Secretary General, the Assistant Secretary General, the distinguished ambassador from Spain, and her entire mission. First, I'd like to congratulate you for your chairship of the Permanent Council for the last quarter of this cycle. We believe that your energy will be important for transforming for good this organization. And we've seen a lot of good changes come from presidents or chairs of the Permanent Council in the past. This is the 5th consecutive year that I have had the honor of celebrating this important day called the Encounter Between Two Worlds. And although many wonder why we call it that, we can't deny the painful, traumatic past that brought us together from 1492 onwards. But it's still worth saying that despite that trauma and pain that last for hundreds of years, we saw the building of new hope as well through mutual understanding, and above all in a unified vision amongst the Americas together with Spain. I believe that what brings us together here in the Organization of American States and at this Permanent Council is and together with the mission of Spain, represented by our dear Ambassador Monton, is an example of that new vision for for prosperity and resilience. We work tirelessly to better all the peoples of the Americas, and today we are grateful to Spain, and we celebrate democratic Spain. Spain that is socially inclusive, that is pushed for tolerance and development, and so these are some of and other topics that are very delicate, for example, non-discrimination, immigration, and we celebrate Spain that has pushed for an international order that respects all peoples and multilateralism. We greet particularly Spain, who is part of the G20, and they have raised their voice on behalf of people to defend the lives of children facing genocide. They raised their voice for institutionality, for strong institutions, and we also recognize and honor a humanist Spain that has learned from the lessons of the past, that has made it be able to move forward. The world would be so different, Mr. Chair, if all people, all nations, learned from our own trauma and learned to value human beings beyond their race. We could see each other as equal, as brothers and sisters, to do away with hate speech and learn to live in goodness and unity and solidarity. Today, we are very far from that utopia and that dream. Mr. Chair, the plurinational state of Bolivia has historically and beyond the political tides has pushed for a relationship based on dignity and mutual respect with Spain. That multilateral space has allowed us to push towards a future that will continue on that strong foundation despite any political change in winds. Mr. Chair, in some academic debates, we have seen reflections made not just about the relationship that is questioned when it comes to the colonial relationship between Spain and the U.S., but also what Spain and Europe have learned from the Americas. And I wonder how different the world would have been if Europe had learned more about the unity, the vision of unity from the indigenous peoples of the Americas. I think we'd be living very different reality, for example, with the climate emergency. we could make up two parts of the same shared vision and world. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you, Bolivia. Now, Chile, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As you indicated, beyond a shared history that is complex and painful and also fertile, what brings us together today is the responsibility of looking forward. And in that sense, the greatest homage that we can render is to renew our commitment to building a better future for the Americas and for Europe, focused on concrete solutions that improve the lives of our citizens. In an international context that is marked by polarization, doubt, anxiety, authoritarianism, it is more important than ever to strengthen this collective action and cooperation so that we can face global challenges. And with that in mind, as indicated by Mrs. Monton, Chile is together with Brazil, Colombia, and Uruguay to defend a space for democracy. We reaffirm our commitment to democratic principles and strengthening those institutions that maintain democracy. Spain, as a permanent observer to the OAS, has been a committed partner to this organization, supporting projects that are focused on promoting democracy, sustainable development, protection of human rights, and strengthening of institutions in our region. That is the basis on which we must continue building. And for Chile, this date represents an opportunity to work together to face challenges such as the digital transformation, gender equality, climate change, the protection of human rights, and the defense of human rights. Because if we've learned anything from history, it's that people need protection of peoples and communities requires a constant effort and an eye to protecting both current and future generations. Many thanks.
Muchas gracias a la delegación de
Thank you, Chile. Brazil, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as those who took the floor before me, I would also like to greet and congratulate you as in your chairship as chair of the Permanent Council and wish you every success in your work. Brazil might be the only country that speaks Portuguese in the Americas. We do share an Ibero history and a cousin language, as well as a shared vision for the future. And that goes beyond culture. It's based on values and principles that have modeled our international action. We defend democracy and human rights as indispensable pillars of free civil societies that are also fair. And we join together our efforts to defend democracy together with our colleagues that took the floor before me. This is an example of our shared commitment to protecting democratic institutions. We also share the conviction that multilateralism is a safeguard that is indispensable for preventing some of the most horrific horrors of our history that continue shaping our history. This is a mutual beneficial relationship, and on a social level, we together value diversity and believe that it strengthens us, and at the same time we must protect those most marginalized groups such as indigenous populations, populations of African descent, people with disabilities, and the LGBTQIA+ population, as well as women who, despite being the majority of our global population, continue to be marginalized and victims of violence. We also recognize that sustainable development and inclusion go together, and to eradicate poverty, we need both. That is what democracy is for, and that will guarantee pace. And this work must be based on dialogue with mutual respect, all the while keeping in mind our shared history in order to fight for a fairer, freer future for both the Americas and Europe in favor of human dignity and democracy. I'd be remiss if I did not recognize Spain and the Ambassador Monton for their incredible support for our different development programs in favor of progress and democracy. Thank you. Thank you, Brazil. And now Uruguay, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Pascual, I wish you every success in your work as Chair of the Permanent Council. Madam Ambassador Monton, Mr. Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Secretary of Juridical Affairs, Uruguay this year will have 200 years of independence under its belt and 40 years since its return to democracy. And here, what my colleagues discussed when it came to discussing the independence was that we wanted to form a project that was based on very clear ideas. The first was auto-determination, self-determination for each of our communities. Second, the Republic. And third, fraternity, which, when it comes to Uruguay, can be codified in law as equality. And throughout these last 200 years, Spain and the other nations of the Americas, and particularly Uruguay, my country, we have seen the healing of certain wounds, and we've come together in solidarity and respect. I have to, of course, recognize here that there have been waves of migration because of political persecution that have suffered much. Those Republicans who fought against the dictatorship, the Franco dictatorship in Spain, and the former exilees of the 80s who left Uruguay to go to Spain. We saw a surge of Spanish migration towards La Plata, and today more than 50% of our population is of Spanish descent because of political or economic issues that pushed them out. And they joined our country, and what they brought over is part of our culture, our economy, our policies, our politics, our sports. And after the 70s and 80s, up until the very beginning of this century, many Uruguayans left Uruguay because of the economic crisis that we inherited, and Spain and many of its cities received those Uruguayans. I can't forget to mention either the turn back to democracy. We've got about 40 years now at this point, and almost 50-50 for Spain. This is so important to mention because they went hand in hand almost. They fed off of each other. And luckily, Spain saw the campaign during those years. And I remember the visit from King Juan Carlos to Uruguay in '82, just as we were coming out of dictatorship in Uruguay. He came to the embassy, and he met with leaders for democracy from different political parties, and that was a very important visit, and it's part of what we look at as this new relationship between our countries. And of course, cooperation between Spain and the Americas has a particular connotation because one of Spain's cultural centers is located in Montevideo, and in that path towards development, that center has been very important for us, particularly when it comes to cooperation with Spain, as I mentioned. And ironically, now here we are together, as has been mentioned, both by the ambassador as well as by the representatives of Chile and Brazil. We are once again defending democracy at a time of great risk and danger and attacks on democracy, both regionally and globally. And for our delegation, it is an honor to share this space with our brother and sister countries as part of the Inter-American Volunteer Group. These are values that we share, that we want to continue to defend. And I will wrap up by recognizing and celebrating this new stage for more democracy, more human rights, more equality, gender equality, and greater integration. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Uruguay. Guatemala, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. En primer lugar, permítame, embajador, expresarle nuestras felicitaciones y el apoyo de Guatemala durante su gestión como presidente del Consejo Permanente en estos próximos meses. Guatemala, adicional a lo ya expresado por la distinguida embajadora de Panamá, en nombre de los países de Centroamérica, se permite indicar en capacidad nacional lo siguiente. Agradecemos a la Misión Observadora Permanente de España por proponer la realización de esta tradicional sesión extraordinaria con motivo de la conmemoración del 12 de octubre, una fecha cargada de historia que simboliza el encuentro de dos mundos y que a lo largo de los siglos
Between two worlds, and has left an indelible mark on our culture, politics, and economy. Miguel Ángel Asturias said that every language is another way of looking at the world. And here, sharing Spain, we can see a flowering cooperation between our countries, and Spanish support as a permanent observer since 1972 has been clear in its leadership and its clear-eyed vision of democracy as the road forward based on cooperation and solidarity. We have more than 200 years of diplomatic relations between our countries, working for social justice and sustainable development, and that commitment has produced concrete results. We've seen direct support from Spain for initiatives and support in the adjacency zone between Belize and Guatemala. At the same time, thanks to the firm commitment of Spain to gender equality, in May of 2024, we celebrated in Guatemala City the first meeting of experts on parity that set the stage for a future model law for gender parity in legislative bodies, which is a commitment and a concrete step forward. In addition, the international cooperation for development from Spain has also been fundamental in that relationship. Under their leadership, we have seen the deployment of development initiatives that reflect priorities for Guatemala: eradicating child hunger, gender violence, strengthening the rule of law, and human rights. Mr. Chair, I'd also like to remember the official visit from the King of Spain last February. They were received in Guatemala City by the President of Guatemala, and there we saw a joint statement signed committing both countries to mutual respect, liberty, and human rights. And on that occasion, we also saw the firm backing of Spain and the international community for democracy in Guatemala. Another important event in our bilateral relations has been the ordered migratory flows support. And in 2024, we saw official cooperation take effect. And that instrument will allow for a safer, regular, and ordered migratory flow between both states while protecting workers who are forced to migrate. We've also renewed our commitment to training and cultural support. And we see here a commitment to diplomacy between our relationship. Our ties have also been strengthened at a higher level. In June of 2024, Her Majesty the Queen Letizia came to Guatemala, and that showed great appreciation for our shared relationship. And I'd like to take this opportunity to express our great appreciation to the Spanish people and leadership represented by Ambassador Monton, and we look forward to this new phase of cooperation. Guatemala is very appreciative of our partnership, and we look forward to future partnerships in Ibero-American summits, as mentioned by Ambassador Monton. And in that spirit, vision, and shared commitments, we are renewed here to these fraternal ties with Spain, both the people and leadership. And we also congratulate you on your National Day that is coming up next week. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Guatemala.
Thank you very much to Guatemala. We recognize Ecuador. Chair, Secretary General of the OAS, Ms. Assistant Secretary General, greetings to the plenary and the podium, those who are observing and those who are listening to us. And how much time has passed since Columbus arrived and implored God to our America, and calculating that eternity was not enough. This is not the time or the place for us to go through collective catharsis. The Americas is a continent of open wounds. That's very clear. America with memories beyond the color of the paper on which it is written. How much time has passed? There isn't enough time. Cristina Peri Rossi stated that what happened yesterday was definitive, is going in another direction today. We have collective identities which are mixed, recognizing one another and seeking respect. It changed the map and the way we look at it. Or perhaps it just changed the way that we look at anything. It changed so much. And AI yesterday has begun highlighting this historic process that's transforming our entire continent, marking an encounter, if not a clash, between two worlds. It is more ambiguous, but at least it is very honest. And we could say that with its lights and shadows, it opened the door to a new era in history. That is history with a capital H, universal history. And if intelligence responded to us or was nourished by this encounter in a very frank tone, it has affirmed that the indifference of our gaze lies in the political decision to look into the shadows of a complex relationship. We have decided to look at it head on in the eyes, as the ambassador of Spain, for whom we have great affection, has already stated. We have decided to look at that October as a time for encounter, as already suggested, but also looking at what Francisco de Vitoria stated, that great Spanish theologian who said that this is a chance for us to look at all of our peoples and the founding of international relations as we look unwaveringly at it in the eyes. And so we have decided to look at it head on. And thank you very much to Ambassador Monton, and thank you to those who have made this session possible. Thank you for giving us this space for critical, constructive reflection so that we can give new meaning to historic events, providing them with meaning based on the way that this organization works, as we remember the history, which has been repeated so many times and has now become a sort of realism based on our existence and coexistence, respect, justice, ethics, non-intervention, and strengthening relations between states. That is the great daily victory that we are rebuilding. That is the victory within the OAS. May its steps be firm and joyous. We wish support to Chile and Costa Rica, and we also are very grateful for the support that have for the networks that have mentioned the ASG, and thank you very much for Canada's leadership and that of the entire team that is with us at these missions. For the Republic of Ecuador, this meeting and all of its lights and shadows led to a wealth that today is one of our strengths. We emphasize this new Ibero-American culture, not focused mainly on the language and religion, which, of course, all of us, including myself, love to highlight, but the diversity of voices. That is where we have a space for women and dissidents, where we are able to look at what might be and ensure that we always lead to unity, and we focus on respect and the fundamental values and building the international community where collective memory is not just a legacy, but part of a living, dynamic project. Ecuador has taken hold of this opportunity to thank Spain for the very important role that it plays, as well as was already expressed by those who took the floor before me, and congratulate them for their independent life, maintaining relations of non-interference, cooperation, and working within the OAS to carry out a high-level, very positive role as a permanent observer.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you very much for your words.
Muchas gracias, embajadora.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. The Dominican Republic is recognized. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good morning. Ambassador Tomas Pascual, Permanent Representative of Chile, Chair of the Permanent Council. Congratulations. And you can always count on support from the Dominican Republic Secretary General Albert Ramdin, ASG, Laura Gil, Ambassador Carmen Monton, Permanent Observer of Spain, ambassadors, delegates. I am honored to take part in this special session of the Permanent Council, where we are commemorating 533 years of this encounter between two worlds, a date which invites us to reflect and also to think about the cultural and historic legacy that was begat in our nations. And today, the Dominican Republic and the Kingdom of Spain are close allies, united not only by our history, but by deep ties of cooperation, friendship, and mutual respect. Our bilateral relationship has evolved and become a model for fruitful collaboration marked by ongoing dialogue, solidarity, and a shared vision of a fairer, more prosperous future for our societies. Over the last several years, we have consolidated an agenda of strategic cooperation, which includes key areas such as education, the environment, healthcare, institutional strengthening, and sustainable development. Thanks to our programs driven by the Spanish International Cooperation Agency, we have been able to make significant strides in drinking water projects, as well as sanitation in rural areas, as well as in providing technical support and training for our young people and promoting growth opportunities, as well as social mobility. But beyond the formal agreements, the relations between our two countries are woven by deep cultural ties that go back centuries. The Spanish language, which we share proudly, is one of the most powerful legacies of this historic encounter, as well as our traditions and artistic expressions, and certainly our culinary traditions. The history that brings us together from the DR and Spain is deeply rooted in the very origins of the Americas. Our island is known as Hispaniola, and it was the first point of contact between Europe and the New World after the arrival of Columbus in 1492. In Dominican soil, we saw the first permanent European city founded in the Americas, Santo Domingo, that is the current capital of our country, and the first cathedral, the first university, and the first hospital in the Americas. These are historic milestones that mark our country as the very cradle of European civilization in the Americas, and it reflects the central role that Spain played in the cultural, political, and social mixing which has forged us as a nation and a region. Today, over 500 years later, after that first encounter, we celebrate not only the past, but also the present and the future. This is a relationship that will continue to strengthen. May this commemoration be a call to continue building bridges of understanding, cooperation, and brotherhood between our nations. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, the Dominican Republic. Suriname.
Ambassador Pascual, I wish you success as chair of the PC, and you can count on our support. We thank Ambassador Monton for allowing us to have this reflective meeting, and we thank her also for being a very active observer at the OAS. Greetings also to the Secretary General and Assistant Secretary General. Mr. Chair, today is a good day for some philosophical reflections on a theme which has kept this hemisphere busy since 1492. Let me share some of these thoughts. The encounter of two worlds was a real encounter because two distinct civilizations met, they collided, and transformed each other in irreversible ways. Two cultures confronted one another, however, without proper preparation. It was a sudden encounter. This encounter brought both promise and tragedy. For the first time, the planet itself became a singular stage. The realization that one species was inhabiting a shared Earth. On the other hand, the meeting was marked by conquest, dispossession, and the violent subordination of one worldview to another. The philosophical lesson is thus double. Every act of opening brings with it both illumination and shadow. The encounter challenged philosophers to reflect on the nature of universality. What does it mean for different peoples, each with their own cosmologies, moral orders, and truths, to come face to face? The European narrative framed the other as new, primitive, or uncivilized, but such terms reveal more about the limits of the perceiver than about the perceived. The Americas, however, were not new worlds, they were parallel worlds, existing with equal legitimacy. The encounter, however painful, also created new syntheses, languages, cultures, religions, and identities that transcended their origins. In the midst of violence, human creativity carved out new forms of life and hybrid traditions that remind us that no culture is an island and that even domination cannot erase the resilience of the human spirit. The encounter teaches us about responsibility. When two worlds meet, the ethical task is to recognize the dignity of the other, to engage in dialogue rather than domination, to allow mutual transformation rather than conquest. The legacy of 1492 shows us what happens when this responsibility is betrayed. The future demands we choose differently. The encounter of the two worlds is not simply a past event. It is an ongoing question. How do we meet what is other to us? Another culture, another perspective, another truth. Do we seek to master it or learn from it? In that choice lies the measure of our humanity. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you to the delegation of Suriname. A continuación,
St. Kitts and Nevis is recognized.
Distinguished Chair I congratulate you on the assumption of the presidency of the council and assure you of the support of St. Kitts and Nevis. Dear Excellencies, Delegates, Secretary General Ramdin, Assistant Secretary General Hill, I especially greet my colleague and friend Ambassador Carmen Monton, Permanent Observer of Spain to the OAS. As we reflect on the encounter of two worlds, St. Kitts and Nevis acknowledges that the Americas were already vibrant spaces of life and creativity, home to peoples who lived, worked, and thrived in harmony with their environment long before 1492. Yet, this encounter, for all the turbulence it inspired, altered the course of civilizations, giving rise to a colorful melding of cultures and traditions, scattered, rich and diverse, multifaceted societies that continue today to define the promise of today's thriving fount of enduring strength, talent, and potential, the people of the Americas. Today, the peoples of this hemisphere, through their industry, creativity, and embrace of democracy, contribute to a vision of harmonious coexistence in a region committed to peace. Excellencies, the lesson of the encounter is that reflection and remembrance must fuel reconciliation, and that our future must be built not solely on a focus on perpetrated wrongs, but in equal measure on overcoming to the point of being ourselves exemplary bastions of justice and opportunity for all. As we look ahead, may we continue to build on truth, partnership, and diversity as the foundations of peace and prosperity in strengthening the bonds of friendship with Spain, which St. Kitts and Nevis so embraces and values. It is in this context that St. Kitts and Nevis warmly congratulates Spain on the celebration of its National Day, and most especially on 50 years of democracy. Spain's journey stands as a testament to the resilience and renewal and to the power of democratic governance to inspire progress. My delegation recognizes and applauds Spain's meaningful role as a visible and active observer within the Organization of American States, and celebrates its friendship with the peoples of the Americas and its continued partnership in advancing peace, equity, and respect. As Spain marks 50 years of democracy, may this milestone serve as both a reminder of the enduring value of democratic renewal and as an inspiration to all nations striving for peace, justice, and inclusion. St. Kitts and Nevis extends warm wishes for Spain's continued growth and prosperity and reaffirms our appreciation for the hand of friendship that Spain has consistently extended to the people of the Americas. Estimada embajadora Monton, en nombre de St. Kitts y Nevis, me complace además agradecer a España su dedicada labor en el avance del aprendizaje del idioma español como puente para construir un mayor entendimiento entre nuestros pueblos, con especial
A better understanding between our people, with special thanks for the very fruitful collaboration in my own country. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you to St. Kitts and Nevis. And we recognize El Salvador. Thank you very much, Chair. Congratulations for your election to the helm of this permanent council, and we can reiterate my delegation's full support. And our regional representative already spoke, but I'd like to speak on behalf of El Salvador, and we salute Spain and Carmen Monton, the permanent observer of Spain to the OAS, in the framework of this commemorative session, the encounter between two worlds. These are historic events that bring our people together, laying the groundwork for the close relationship today between the Americas and Spain. We're tied by culture, customs, language, and shared traditions. And we see that in our shared values for democracy, peace, and development for our people. And this is a commemoration and an opportunity for us to remember what has taken place and also find our footing in the present as we look towards shared challenges and opportunities to work hand in hand in overcoming all of them based on a relationship of sovereign equality and independence. We celebrate Spain's decision over 50 years ago to build ties with the hemisphere, laying the groundwork for its position as a permanent observer to the OAS and reiterating its commitment with financial and technical support in achieving the goals of this organization. The agreement between the Spanish International Development Agency for Development and the OAS has reiterated this commitment. And in the words of Ambassador Monton, it aims to continue supporting a brotherly region and the oldest organization of multilateralism, convinced of its value for dialogue and seeking shared solutions. Through the Spanish Fund to the OAS and voluntary contributions, they support the EOMs, as well as working to protect and promote human rights, particularly those of women and people in vulnerable situations, the climate emergency, and others. We particularly value the technical and financial support that Spain has provided within the framework of the regional agreement through MIRPS, translated into impactful projects providing protection for various families in my region and the entire hemisphere. We also have the Enye Circle at the OAS with active participation from Spain and El Salvador, as well as cultural exchanges such as in the Cologne Library, the Art Museum of the Americas, and others. Chair, Ambassador, El Salvador would like to take advantage of this important space to underscore the robust ties of friendship between Spain and El Salvador through high-level meetings where we have periodically exchanged, and particularly we looked at political issues between our countries in April and reiterated our mutual commitment to a close collaborative relationship. This closeness has led to continuity, to broad dialogue, and borne its fruit economically when it comes to investment. Spain is one of the main economic partners in my country, and beyond investment and cooperation in various areas, we also see economic empowerment for women, tourism, water resources, the environment, culture, scholarships, businesses, and others. We reiterate that in the years to come, we will continue to deepen this bilateral, regional, and hemispheric relationship to benefit our organization and particularly our people. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, El Salvador.
Thank you very much, El Salvador. Haiti is recognized. Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, Secretary General, Madam Assistant Secretary General, distinguished ambassadors, dear colleagues. Chair, I would like to begin by congratulating you for your election to the chairmanship of the Permanent Council, and I would like to wish you most success. I'd like to let you know that you can certainly count on our collaboration. Chair, history is an interesting thing because when we listen to it, we would think that war built our history as nations, and then we find ourselves in a period of peace and democracy after world wars, which have led to the loss of tens, if not hundreds of millions of lives. And these periods of peace have led to great long periods of prosperity. Progress made during these periods of peace and democracy have led us to question the very idea, this warmongering idea, that violence and war forge history. But if we go a little bit further back in history, we can see that 4 centuries of colonization, 4 centuries after 1492, that meeting between 2 worlds redefined the destiny of mankind and womankind as well, Madam ASG, because certainly women and men are in this together. But history is an interesting thing in the sense that this encounter between 2 worlds was founded in tragedy as well as cultural wealth and mixing, and this meeting between 2 worlds made Haiti a people, a unique culture, an aspiration. Fortunately, we can look at the past with 2020 hindsight to see that the future of mankind should be born out of solidarity, and Spain today is part of this project. The solidarity, democracy, and fertile humanity. And we congratulate them for all of that. And we can say that multiculturalism is a powerful tool for this human and democratic project. We are delighted to be part of this, and we congratulate our friends, notably Spain. And once again, I'm focusing on Spain. We congratulate you and all of our friends, all of the countries that have been part of this, the competitive countries, colonizing countries, which are now democratic countries and developing alongside us to build fraternal solidarity. And we congratulate them for all of that. And we tell them all, and I am saying this to Spain, which is going to be celebrating its national holiday very soon. Happy holidays. Thank you very much, Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you to the Haitian delegation. And now we will hear from the Secretary General.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias, Embajador Tomás Pascual.
Thank you very much, Tomás Pascual. And this is your first session as the chair of the Permanent Council. Congratulations, Ambassador Carmen Monton, Permanent Observer of Spain, Assistant Secretary General, distinguished ambassadors, permanent observers, member states, and permanent observers. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to commemorate the encounter between two worlds, that first encounter between Spain and the Americas. And this moment in history is very complex, and on occasions it has also been quite painful. However, it opened the door to deep exchanges which mold what we are today. That encounter between two worlds has left us a legacy of language, culture, art, and values which transcend borders and continue to unite our peoples.
This encounter is not only a matter of memory. It is also a call to responsibility, where cooperation strengthens democracy, protects human rights, promotes sustainable development, and consolidates peace throughout the hemisphere. Much has been said about the value of international cooperation and multilateralism, and we thank all member states for supporting the notion, the concept of multilateralism. The lesson of the encounter of the two worlds is that diversity can be a source of unity, and history can serve as a foundation for renewed solidarity. Today also marks a renewed and strengthened relationship between Spain and the Organization of American States. As the first country to become a permanent observer to the OAS 53 years ago, Spain has been much more than an observer. It has been an active, loyal, and generous partner. And I want to recognize the very active, prominent, present role of Ambassador Carmen Monton in everything the OAS is doing. So thank you very much for that active engagement. Over the past decades, Spain has stood by us in moments of challenge, leading its support to the peoples of the Americas and to the agenda of this organization. Since assuming my duties 4 months ago, I have had the privilege of experiencing this partnership firsthand. Several meetings with Ambassador Monton, 2 meetings with the head of the Spanish Cooperation Agency, 2 meetings with senior authorities from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, 1 audience, a substantive audience, I must say, with His Majesty the King of Spain. These encounters, in my view, have reaffirmed Spain's deep commitment to this hemisphere, to multilateralism, and to the Organization of American States. Another example is a significant cooperation agreement of 2 million euros that we signed with the Development Agency of Spain in Sevilla to support OAS programs in 2026, achieved through proactive discussions led by Ambassador Monton. Spain established the first OAS cooperation fund nearly 20 years ago. Through this fund, Spain has set a remarkable example, supporting over 200 projects and initiatives in democracy, human rights, peace and security, gender equality, and sustainable development. As the fund's 20th anniversary approaches, the OAS seeks to strengthen collaboration through multi-year programming to better address regional challenges, with Spain's continued support remaining vital. In my recent encounter with the Vice Minister in the margins of the United Nations General Assembly briefly, we spoke about creating an elevated level of engagement through not only a multi-year track, but also a roadmap agreement that will be comprehensive, covering all the areas of collaboration. Spain has also invested in education, particularly through its multilingualism program, which benefits Caribbean countries and OAS diplomats learning Spanish. And I must say that myself, I'm committed to continue to improve my Spanish. So I look forward to that assistance, Ambassador. These efforts are crucial for small island developing states, integration within the rest of Latin America. We also celebrate Spain's endeavors to connect the Caribbean nations with the Ibero-American community, anticipating the forthcoming Ibero-American Summit next year in Spain. In many ways, Spain is also our point of entry in Europe. And in all discussions which we have with the European Union, we always ask Spain to be front runner in strengthening the collaboration between the Western Hemisphere, but specifically between the OAS and the European Union, together with other partner countries with which our member states have a long-standing relationship. Mr. Chairman, esta conmemoración del Encuentro de los Dos Mundos nos recuerda que la historia debe llamarnos a construir.
We are reminded that history should bring us to build bridges of friendship and diplomacy, and Spain is part of the American continent with concrete actions, generosity, and a long-term vision. I'd like to express our own friendship and our warmest appreciation towards the Spanish people via Ambassador Monton. I would like to express our most sincere congratulations to the Spanish government on its National Day on October 12th. Many thanks. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. I'll take this opportunity to thank all of you for your interventions, for your remarks, and for your well wishes as chair of the Permanent Council. I hope that those wishes are turned into concrete actions from all chairships, from all committees, and for all of the work that is being done in this organization so that it becomes an organization of action to confront and satisfy the needs of the people in our communities. And I'd also like to thank the youth volunteer team. I hope to also see renewed vigor in our work. Let us continue to work together on behalf of all people living in the Americas. Thanks to Ambassador Monton for requesting this space for the commemorative day on October 12th and the special session under this chairship and vice chairship under Costa Rica. The session is adjourned. Thank you.